Gentlemen, thank you for your shrewd analysis of the market. You've reminded us that SASE is a long-term journey, and now is a great time for enterprises to rethink their security architecture for the road ahead. Now, let's shift gears. As anyone on Tinder can tell you, it's very important to have standards. So up next, MEF CTO Pascal Menezes will discuss MEF's industry-leading effort to standardize SASE services and its importance for enterprises, service providers, and technology vendors.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this great Infinite Edge series that MEF has been producing every month. Today, we're going to cover a great episode on SASE. In today's session, I'm going to cover basically a high-level overview of what MEF is doing in SASE and why I believe SASE is so important. And our co-editors of this project, Daniel and Neil, will cover much more details. So let's just get started. Number one is, I believe SASE is part of a greater challenge happening in the industry. And basically that challenge is, as users work from anywhere, they want to be secure. They want to have a frictionless environment wherever they work from. They want to make sure that obviously the applications and their experience is working perfectly, but more importantly, they can be secure and not have to worry about security. So in this end-to-end vision, wherever they work from to wherever they want to go, security plays a very, very critical role. And with that, MEF has been working on 4 pillars in this area of network transformation that's driving digital transformation. Number one is a very high-speed underlay, interconnecting that high-speed underlay with automation, and we call that automation, east-west automation sonata. The second is on that high-speed underlay, adding that very agile overlay of SD-WAN, and we've been standardizing SD-WAN very much in all kinds of areas, universal SD-WAN, SD-WAN 70, the service definition, and other areas. And today I'm going to cover specifically the vision we're working on with managed service security services on top of SD-WAN, specifically on SASE. Now, all of this is being driven with the emergence of the edge, and that edge is a 4th pillar we'll be driving more on in MEF, and I'll be covering in the next episode on Infinite Edge. So let's just get going on specifically why SASE is so important and get to the details. Number one is, as cybercrime is over $1 trillion industry and users want to work from everywhere, the idea of why not put security into the cloud? Why not deliver security as a cloud? And that is absolutely true. And with the emergence of the multi-access edge compute environments coming into the POPs and the service providers' POPs and central offices, we can deliver this service from a cloud security cloud-like offering right from those edges. And that's exactly what SASE is deliver security from the edges and not have to put security at every site or on their device or every branch or at the home. Now, in reality, MEF has been working very heavily with this definition of SASE, this cloud model that Gartner first published or talked about. And what we've been doing is actually developing the first standardization of SASE. But with SASE, there also has to be this idea of trust or identity access management. Not anybody can just access the SASE cloud to get to wherever they want to go. They need to first prove identity, and with that identity, decide through that identity what access control, where can they go, and so on. So we've also been working on zero trust, and that is connected with SASE. And in future work, we'll be adding in extended XDR, this extended detection and response. And this is going to be very important also. And while it's a future work item, I'm not going to cover today, it'll plug into the SASE environment. And I also believe that SASE, while it's delivered from the cloud, plays another critical role, is that it's multi-tenant in nature, it's cloud native in nature, and it basically delivers all the security functions that's needed from a cloud-like agility from the edges and not have to be loaded from at the sites wherever the users are. Now, while this might be the vision, in reality, I believe that security is not just going to be at the edges, it's going to be sprinkled throughout. And what you'll see is that security will be at the endpoints, security will be even at the CPE where the users are, because there will have to be some kind of firewall in the routers or at the SD-WAN edges and so on. There'll be certainly security with SASE, and there'll be security at the hyperscale clouds, wherever the destinations that they want to go to. In addition, a very important part of SASE is, and why this is so important to be delivered at the edge, is before you can get to any destination, including the internet or any clouds or your data centers, basically users have to access the SASE cloud, get scrubbed, make sure that everything is secure, and they have access to wherever they want to go, and they provide identity, and then they go with their flows and their applications, and they use their workflows from those clouds. And I believe that's the most critical part of what SASE is. It becomes the gateway to all these multi-cloud destinations, private, public clouds, and it provides that security in a very, very cloud-like, agile way. So with that, let me hand this over to Daniel and Neil to give you more details of what MEF is doing in SASE.
Thank you, Pascal, for that excellent overview and vision, context for our SASE managed services work in MEF. I'm Daniel Bar-Lev, VP Strategic Programs and overall owner of the SASE program at MEF. And I'm joined today by Neil Danilowicz. Neil?
Thank you, Daniel. Good to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm principal architect at Versa Networks, and I'm co-editor of the world's first standard document that surrounds the SASE managed services that is being developed currently at MEF.
Wonderful. Neil, we see three questions as being important for a discussion in this episode of Infinite Edge. I think the first one is, what's the difference between a SASE framework and a SASE managed service? The second topic I think we should cover, what is a SASE managed service? Get that clear for the audience. And the third one is, does a SASE managed service have to be fully in the cloud? So perhaps we'll start off with that first topic. What's the difference between a SASE framework and a SASE managed service in your opinion?
Yeah, so these are all very excellent questions and very central to the conversation that is developing around the idea of SASE and what it means. You know, Gartner first kicked off this whole idea of the SASE concept back in late 2019 when they published their white paper. And in that, they talked about a framework that wasn't something revolutionary, brand new. It was actually taking existing concepts and then putting them together from networking and security in a manner that was meaningful and was actually going to transform the way that enterprises were transitioning from solutions that were vendor specific and architectured in a certain way. And now we're coming to this idea where security and the functionality of the cloud and using cloud compute resources to actually drive some of the security. So it's been a big deal on how you actually transition this from a centrally located set to these clouds. And we need to look at how that transformation will actually help the impacts of the performance, and so we don't get this tromboning or earmarking back to a certain data center.
So the framework is what was described by Gartner, and it certainly struck a chord. But I think they're giving guidance really for what enterprises, how they're going to re-architecture their security and networking together, I guess. And what we're talking about is a managed service at MEF. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say that what we see is that as this concept of SASE is coming together, there doesn't seem to be a individual vendor or an individual service provider that's got everything that needs to be done in a meaningful and significant way when it comes to SASE. So what we see is it's going to be very difficult for an enterprise, even who has a huge IT department, to actually wade through everything that it needs to be done in order for the networking piece to be right, the security piece to be right, and the policy piece to be right, in order to actually provide this. So what we see in the near term is that this managed services is probably a way for enterprises to augment their IT departments to actually start to bring on the idea of a SASE service.
So it's sort of do it yourself versus managed service. What we saw in SD-WAN, I think, sort of back 4 years ago, it was predominantly enterprises, do it yourself together with, I think, a lot of the vendors, perhaps including Versa Networks. And then we saw that crossover around about 2019, I think, where SD-WAN managed services sort of came more into the picture and started to predominate. Is that what you see happening here, that sort of that crossover with SASE, let's call it do it yourself, or enterprise framework and SASE managed services offered by service providers?
Most definitely. So, very large corporations that want to go and do it themselves and have a huge IT department have a dearth of expertise. And so they can actually figure out the necessary needs for how to interconnect the current cloud services with their current security services, with their current networking, whether they use SD-WAN or they use some sort of other advanced networking technology. They have that ability to do that. Where the managed services helps make it more easy for SMB and small businesses to actually embrace this is the managed services actually done a lot of that work to figure out what piece parts work together, and you don't need a huge IT department. So we see that managed services as being a great way to get this SASE concept out to a larger audience and a larger usage base versus just doing it yourself.
Well, we're doing a lot of work in MEF. You're co-editing the first standard in MEF around SASE managed services, what we're calling MEF-W117. Perhaps it would be useful to give some insight to the audience about what the central components of that standard that we're developing is around actors, subjects, targets, and so on. Do you want to perhaps quickly outline that?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things we have to remember is that this idea of a SASE service is a true marriage between security and networking, right? So we definitely have the first two elements. You have to have connectivity, right, in order to provide this service. The second thing is we have to have security functions and security policies that actually are going to work to provide this connection, right? And the last one is we need the policy, right? The key portion of this is all policy driven. In simplest terms, we can say that one actor wants to operate or perform an action on another actor. The first actor we call the subject actor, the second actor we call the target actor. So if you think of it in this way, it's like, I'm working from home and I'm accessing the company's ERP system, right? I'm the subject actor of the company's ERP system. They're the target actor. And let's say as the subject actor in the classic model, I need to create a VPN from my laptop to the company's private cloud. And from there, I would actually be routed to the ERP. This created a major headache, especially when we see what was happening in the pandemic area. The VPN systems just really couldn't handle the overload, right? So now we have to go in through the VPN, then we have to go to the provider edge, and from there you get this tromboning. If my company is located in San Jose, California, I'm located on the East Coast of the United States. Clearly, in the VPN scenario, I'm going all the way across the United States, even though the resource could be in a cloud that's actually sitting closer to where I am.
So I think the concept of subject actor and target actor has really greatly simplified the whole story for me, because the truth is that we sort of tend to think of that use case of remote workers that you mentioned, and it's a very important one, especially what we saw in 2020. But it's now more and more about devices and applications. So, it might be human, it might be a machine, it might be software. But they can all be subject actors, and that this idea that you're going to have all these different types of subject actors acting on devices or services in the cloud is very important. And that SASE managed service basically sitting there between the two, making sure that it's only the right subject actors that can access the right target actors, I think for me was a great simplification.
Exactly. I mean, this whole idea is it's not just Neil or Daniel's laptop that's actually accessing the system. It could be any IoT device. It could be a turbine, it could be a camera, it could be even an application that's just running on a server that needs to be able to access another application in a cloud set, right? So we're just doing some sort of provisioning or some other type of operation that needs to be done. This combination of the subject and the target is really starting to explode, right? The number of things that we have to actually look at when we're trying to figure out who is authorized, who is authenticated, and who, really making sure that we understand the identity is becoming more complex as it goes on.
So perhaps we should just wrap up with that last question of, is the SASE managed service all in the cloud? Are the security functions in the SASE managed service all in the cloud? And I think that this is something that really is worthwhile clarifying, because it's about distributing security functions the way they need to be distributed, right? They can be distributed all the way down right to the user device or the campus edge or whatever. So perhaps could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so one of the things that Gartner always said is that SASE has to be a cloud provided service. And while I agree that cloud security is a major component for any SASE service, because obviously some of the workloads that are needed in order to provide many of the advanced security functions are completely CPU and memory intensive. So having that elasticity that comes from a cloud service is actually absolutely imperative. One of the things that a SASE service absolutely positively has to do for an enterprise is actually make it easier to make that elastic edge secure. So it doesn't make sense that everything's in the cloud. What the SASE service has to do is put the appropriate security functions at the appropriate place based upon what the enterprise policy is. And so that could mean putting, say, a firewall all the way down in an agent on a laptop, or at a SD-WAN edge, you do some of your security functions, and then you do your zero trust framework and identification of the actors and all that type of stuff at that edge, but then allowing the more advanced security functions to actually be done in a cloud that is actually instantiated close to where the actor is.
So I think this is a great opportunity to a call to action to the audience watching us today to get involved in the project that you're co-editing, MEF-117, the definition of what a SASE managed service is and its attributes. And I think we'll wrap up there and hand back to our hosts. Thank you very much, Neil.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for everyone watching.